Good morning, everyone. It's the County Press for Friday, and this is Barry reading with Sinara.
Hello from Sonara. And first of all, this is the Society news for Friday, the 27th of October, 2017. On Tuesday, there will be coffee mornings held in support of the Society on Tuesday, the 31st of October. The coffee mornings are held at the Cloisters in Bembridge from 10:15 a.m. till 12 o'clock noon, and at the end of the Line Cafe in Freshwater from 10:30 a.m. to 12 o'clock noon. The Dolphin Swim Group will meet at the Waterside Pool in Ryde on Tuesday, 31st of October. Swimming starts at 8 p.m, and the group has sole use of the pool for this session. Lifeguards are present while the group are swimming. If you wish to join, please call the Society first to advise us of your level of swimming ability. Wednesday. The Society Coffee Morning will be held this coming Wednesday, 1st of November. Come and join us for a cup of coffee and a chat. Why not bring a friend along, as well as the coffee mornings are open to all. The Society Coffee Morning will be joined by the Macular Degeneration Group for their monthly meeting. The Bowling Group will be meeting at LA Bowl in Ryde today at 2 p.m. The cost is £3.95, which includes shoe hire. All are welcome. Please note there is no transport for this group. On Thursday, the Knitters and Naturals will be meeting at Millbrook House this Thursday, 2nd of November, from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. There is help for knitting at all levels, coffee and chat, and readers that will entertain you in the afternoon. Please note, transport may be available to some of the groups, but please call the Society first on 522205. On Friday, the Interact Club of Cows, the junior wing of the Rotary Club, is organising a quiz at St Mary's Church in Cowes on Friday, the 3rd of November, from 7:30 p.m, with proceeds going to the IWSB. The cost is £7 per adult and £5 per child, which includes a hot meal. There will also be a raffle. Teams can be up to 7 people. To book a team, please email aandpmcrocket@gmail.com, and Crocket is spelt CROCKETT, or lucyholloway.pine@gmail.com. And on to any other news. We are now taking orders for large print calendars and diaries for 2018. If you would like an order form or more information, please call Laura Jasper, Centre Administrator, on telephone 522-205 or email inquiries@iwsb.org.uk. We are looking into organising a monthly audio book club to be held at Lord Louis Library in Newport. This would probably take place on the last Wednesday of each month in the afternoon, starting in the new year. If this is a group you may be interested in joining, please register your interest with Laura Jasper, Centre Administrator, on telephone 522205 or email inquiries@iwsb.org.uk. Please note there would be no transport available for this group. The story writing competition is gathering momentum, so if you're feeling creative, why not enter, as there are some great prizes to be won. Entry forms must be returned by Friday, 10th of November. We will be holding a low vision open day here at Millbrook House on Tuesday, 21st of November, 2:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. We will be joined by Dolphin, Enhanced Vision and Calibre. Come along and explore the latest products and technologies for blind and partially sighted people. Refreshments and parking will be available. For more information, please call Laura Jasper, Central Administrator, on telephone 522205 or email inquiries at iwsb.org.uk.
And now we have the scaffolding news. Please find below a list of known footway obstructions for works, including scaffolding or hoarding. We are unable to include end dates, as many are extended on a week-by-week basis. Also included are tables and chairs, permits that have been issued in the past week. Bay Area current scaffolds: Lloyds Bank, Regent Street, Shanklin; 47 High Street, Shanklin; Carlton Hotel, Esplanade, Sandown; 37A High Street, Shanklin; 32 Melville Street, Sandown; and 4B Station Avenue, Sandown. New scaffolds: 97 to 95 High Street, Shanklin, due up on the 31st of October; 3 Fort Street, Sandown, due up the 2nd of November; the Pink Beach Hotel, Esplanade, Sandown. This is due up on the 6th of November.
And in the Cowes area, current scaffolds: development site Castle Street, East Cowes, and Cooperative Funeral Care 14 Ferry Road, also East Cowes. Hursts in 1718 High Street, Cowes; 28 Albert Street, East Cowes; 61 York Street in Cowes. Current hoardings: 272 to 283 Arctic Road in Cowes, 93 High Street, Cowes.
And Newport area, current scaffolds: Nippert Court, West Street, Newport; 38 Key Street, Newport; 18 Lugley Street, Newport; 20 Holyrood Street, Newport; 16 Crocker Street, Newport; 16 Lugley Street, Newport; 38 Chapel Street, Newport. And new scaffolds: 81 Trafalgar Road, Newport. This is due up 1st of November. Ryde area.
Ryde area. Current scaffolds: St Mary's Church, Ryde, along St Mary's Passage; Oasis Dental Practice, 9 Melville Street, Ryde; the Yar Bridge, 99 New Road, Brading; Little Bramley Rope Walk, Seaview; 10 East Street, Ryde; 75 George Street, Ryde; 46 to 50 The Old Waxworks, High Street, Brading; Santander, 34 High Street, Ryde. And new scaffolds: Old Gallery Dan's Kitchen in Newlands, St Helens, due up on the 6th of November, and the shop High Street, Seaview, due up 30th of October.
And the South Wight area, Cliff View, Hamborough Road, Ventnor; West Wight area, current scaffolds: Mulberries, High Street, Yarmouth; new scaffolds: Erimew Court, Bridge Street, Yarmouth. This is due up 3rd of November. This week's In Touch in this week's episode, Antipodean edition. During his recent visit to the Antipodes, Peter Wight talked to Mary Ann Diamond about the National Disability Insurance Scheme, which is due to be rolled out in Australia. The scheme is funded by taxpayers and is paid out to those who need it, rather than the UK system of being a benefit which people are required to claim. Neil Jarvis works for the National Foundation for the Blind in New Zealand, and before moving there, lived in the UK. Neil explains the main differences between the two funding systems. Peter also met Terry McElroy, who lives in Christchurch and experienced the city's major earthquake in 2011. Terry describes to Peter how all her familiar landmarks were destroyed, making navigation for a blind person extremely difficult and in some cases impossible.
And on to the county press. And the main headline, ready for Isle of Wight to be Pride of UK. And the accompanying article. 30,000 visitors from around the world could descend on the Isle of Wight next summer for UK Pride, and it could be big business for the island's economy. That's according to the island's tourist chief. Having launched the island's first Pride event in Ryde this July, the Isle of Wight team submitted a bid for the national event and were announced as official hosts at the weekend. Hull hosted the inaugural UK Pride event this year, and it was a big hit in the European City of Culture 2017. Craig Jones, What's On editor at the Hull Daily Mail, said, "We had around 10,000 people lining the streets. The whole place was a massive, colourful rainbow. It was great for the shops, restaurants and bars, and it brought everyone together. We did a full week of events with the main parade on Saturday. It ended with a massive concert in the park with various pop bands performing. Huge parades and live performances from famous faces are on the cards, and Tourism Board Visit Isle of Wight said the event could generate millions of pounds worth of media coverage for the island." Organisers have invited Pride groups from Sweden, Greece and Copenhagen, while representatives from Edinburgh have booked hotels on the island. Visit Isle of Wight Chief Executive David Thornton said, "UK Pride could bring an estimated 30,000 new visitors to the island, generate millions of pounds worth of national media coverage, and send the island's profile as a contemporary and welcoming holiday destination rocketing skywards just before the start of the summer school holidays." The Isle of Wight Pride team has done a tremendous job in showing what can happen when people pull together. The entire island needs to get behind this tremendous opportunity, which is good news for our island image and every tourism and hospitality business which operates here. Isle of Wight Pride trustee Matt Bundy said there was a buzz of excitement around the event, which is believed to be the country's only beach-based Pride. He said, "Getting UK Pride status means we will secure big acts as well as get global marketing. Kylie Minogue is top of my wish list, and I'd love to see the Pet Shop Boys here." Isle of Wight Pride made big ripples across the UK this year, and a lot of people have said they can't miss the only beach Pride next year. Hull hosted the first UK Pride this year, and organisers said they saw visitor numbers increase fivefold. The event featured performances from Mark Almond, Bewitched and Cleopatra.
Now we have slow roadworks now back on track. Major roadworks in Freshwater have moved up a gear. Businesses and residents had expressed anger at the start of the Avenue Road project, claiming repairs started slowly. After talks with Island Roads, Freshwater Parish Councillor Mike Wheeler confirmed the work was on track for a December finish. Councillor Wheeler said, "The work seemed to get off to a slow start. Businesses contacted me to vent their feelings during the first 3 weeks. But I've been in touch with Steve Ashman of Island Roads, who has visited the site and confirmed an increased level of resources on site and an extension of working hours, including Saturdays, to get things moving. They have listened to our views and reacted accordingly. The roadworks are due to end on December the 1st, and local businesses have confirmed a loss of trade." Paul Bridgewater of the Cabin said, "The works have impacted massively on our takings, but I'm just glad to see that things are moving on after the first 3 weeks, when hardly anything seemed to get done. Graham Bennett of Coleman Carpet said, "We hardly have any passing trade at the moment, but we can now see things as starting to take shape." Mr. Ashman said, "With the extra crew and the introduction of Saturday working, when weather allows, we are doing all we can to keep the project on schedule. We recognise it is impossible to carry out an improvement project of this scale and complexity without causing disruption, and we appreciate the understanding and cooperation from businesses and residents." Mr. Ashman acknowledged the initial phase of the project had got off to a slow start due to resource issues.
Mother's anguish over autism diagnosis crisis. Children who need an autism diagnosis before they can get specialist support at school have been kept waiting for more than 2 years. The waiting list at the Autism Diagnostic Research Centre, ADRC, in Southampton, where island children are assessed, has become so unmanageable the centre has stopped taking new referrals. The service will now be taken on by the Isle of Wight NHS Trust and run at the Arthur Webster Clinic in Shanklin. One mum of 3 children, 2 of whom have been diagnosed with autism and one who has been on the waiting list for almost a year, said it was a pretty horrific situation. You can see your child struggling, but you can't get the extra support until you have that diagnosis, she said. If children don't get help, they are more likely to have mental health problems and struggle as adults. The mum, who asked not to be named, said her elder son, 12, had been on the waiting list since November. Her 5-year-old daughter was diagnosed after just 6 months, but her other son, 10, was kept waiting for more than 2 years. It was really hard waiting because he couldn't talk or understand people. He would hit out. He was violent when he was younger. I would cry down the phone asking for help, but nothing could be done until he had that diagnosis. My eldest, who is on the waiting list now, can't cope at mainstream school. We are hoping for a specialist placement, but I'm currently home educating him. It's not ideal because he misses the structure and routine of school and his friends, she said. Head of Mental Health Commissioning, Sue Lightfoot, said the NHS Isle of Wight Clinical Commissioning Group learnt in July ADRC would be unable to continue providing the service. The contract has been awarded to the Trust until March 2019. We are delighted a solution has been found, and children and families have a real prospect of seeing improvements in the service, she said. Our priority must be to secure the best standard of care, to clear the waiting list, and to ensure that waiting times do not rise again.
And here we have a headline, Gritters out this weekend. Island Road's Gritters will be out on the highways network tomorrow, Saturday. But it is not preparation for a cold snap. The highways contractor will be undertaking its autumn parade, a programme to help ensure the winter maintenance fleet and its drivers are fully prepared for colder months ahead. Winter drivers will practice routes and be brought up to speed with any changes in legislation and safety procedures. The fleet and equipment will be tested. The gritting fleet comprises 11 vehicles, 6 frontline gritters supported by backup and specialist vehicles. The routes can be seen on the website islandroads.com.
Demolition is back on track. Demolition work on Sandown's Carlton Hotel to make way for a new Premier Inn is now progressing well after some delays. The hotel chain is building a 100-room hotel on the Esplanade overlooking the bay, which will include a restaurant, creating up to 65 jobs. One of the Isle of Wight Council's members for Sandown, Councillor Ian Ward, said the development would be a benefit to the town's economy. I hope local businesses will adapt to this new type of tourism, which caters for visitors all year round, he said. The development looks like it's on track now, after demolition work had been delayed from last spring. Realistically, it may not open until spring 2019.
And here we have a rogue trader sent to jail after demands for cash. A cold-calling rogue trader was jailed for 18 weeks after pleading guilty to fraud. Henry Smith, who visited the island in September, targeted 2 elderly and vulnerable people, cold-called at their door, carried out minimal gardening work, and then told them he immediately needed £400 in cash and a contract signed to pay a total of £4,000. The Isle of Wight Council Trading Standards team prosecuting said. Appearing at Isle of Wight Crown Court for sentencing, Smith, aged 26, of Staines, was jailed for 18 weeks and made subject to a criminal behaviour order. The order prevents him from going to any property for the purpose of cold calling or carrying out gardening, landscaping or maintenance work without a pre-arranged appointment. Smith must also inform the local police force and local authority trading standards prior to commencing any paid gardening, landscaping or maintenance work in the area. Regulatory and Community Safety Manager at the Isle of Wight Council, Amanda Gregory, said, "The simple message from trading standards is to always say no to any traders offering to carry out work who unexpectedly turn up on your doorstep. I would like to express our thanks to the vigilant carers who brought the matter to our attention. A custodial sentence is rarely given in cases of this nature, and I hope this will act as a good deterrent for an issue which still seems to be on the increase. The use of the criminal behaviour order is a first for this type of offence on the island, and it sends a strong message that cold calling of this nature will not be tolerated." After the case, the council gave a list of top tips to avoid rogue traders. Never pay up front to cold callers. If you require work to be carried out at your home, try to obtain at least 2 written quotes. Check the Trading Standards Trader Approval Scheme, where local traders are vetted for compliance with consumer legislation. Be vigilant for your elderly or vulnerable neighbours. Report concerns to the police or to the Trading Standards Hotline on 823371.
Police hunt assault suspect. Police are hunting a man accused of indecently assaulting a woman in her freshwater home. The victim came face to face with the man when he entered her kitchen through the back door at around 3 p.m. last Friday. The woman, in her 30s, said he indecently assaulted her by touching her over her clothing. The woman, who was unhurt but left shaken, said she did not recognize the man, but he knew her by name. She described him as being white, in his early 30s, and of slim build, with a long, thin face. He was about 6 feet tall, with brown eyes, and wore a hooded top, jeans, and a baseball cap. Police believe he may have made off across the field behind the West Wight Sports and Community Centre. DC Adam Gamble said, "We have been carrying out house-to-house inquiries with the neighbourhood policing team undertaking regular patrols. We are following a number of lines of inquiry, including reviewing CCTV where it's available and preparing an EFIT image. The victim did not recognise the man as someone she knew, but we are trying to establish how he may have known her. The victim had seen the same man acting suspiciously on Tuesday last week, so I would urge anyone who saw him on either day to contact us. call police on 101, quoting 4417040858, or call Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111.
And police have confirmed that they are investigating the collapse of an island holiday lettings agency this summer. A police spokesman said, "We have received a referral from Action Fraud, the National Police Fraud Office, of an allegation of financial irregularities relating to VIP Solutions Limited and VIP Cottages Limited. Inquiries are ongoing." Ryde Holiday Cottage owner Steve Harley Smith pressed for a probe and collected information from fellow holiday accommodation owners who also lost money. When VIP went bust, the lettings agency run by Debs Murphy Latham had been paid by holidaymakers but had not passed on some of the cash to accommodating owners, including Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith said, "I welcome the investigation. We have 11 owners to date, helping the police with the investigation, and some local businesses also were not paid, and one holidaymaker who booked through the VIP site. We still have 2 owners who each lost £10,000. Tourism organisation Visit Isle of Wight helped arrange for some of the 58 accommodation owners to sign up to a separate company, Classic Cottages, which honoured the money VIP owed. But those who did not want to accept Classic's terms had to honour holidays for which they had not been paid." Mrs. Murphy Latham did not respond to the county press's request for a comment.
Branson champions the island. A groundbreaking digital Solent conference endorsed by Sir Richard Branson will promote the Isle of Wight as a high-tech business destination. The council organised free event at Cowes Yacht Haven on November the 8th is hosting a lineup of digital economy experts from the United States and UK, including Chailman Andy Stanford Clark from IBM and the University of Maryland's Jeffrey Starr. In a recorded video, Sir Richard called the Isle of Wight and Solent area one of the leading global edge digital locations for both established and start-up businesses, and a location with the space to think and to breathe. Councillor Wayne Whittle, Cabinet Member for Regeneration and Business Development, said, "This conference is showing the world our ambition and our intent to bring even more companies and the most highly skilled jobs to our island's economy."
And jail for a man who punched his ex. Violently breaching a restraining order resulted in a 20-month jail sentence for a Ryde man. Andrew Harry Hill, 27, of Nelson Street, admitted breaching the order on August the 16th and 17th and causing actual bodily harm to his former partner on August the 17th, when he also caused harassment, alarm or distress to a police officer. He admitted stealing his ex-partner's bicycle and a bottle of vodka. After demanding tobacco from her on August the 16th and threatening her when she refused, he took the bottle of spirit and smashed it outside her home, said Tim Compton, prosecuting. The following day she found him asleep on her sofa when she returned home at 8:15 a.m. from her mother's. He punched her several times in the face, grabbed her around the throat and pushed her against a wall, spat in her face and threatened her with the words, "If you get me nicked, I will kill you." Later that day, as she made a statement to police at a friend's house, he let down 2 police car tyres, all the tyres of his ex-girlfriend's car, and keyed the paintwork with her new partner's name. He also threatened the officer Oscar Vincent, representing Hill, told the Isle of Wight Crown Court on Tuesday his client relapsed into using crack cocaine after a crisis in his personal life. While in jail, he had been drug-free and gained a number of training qualifications. Sentencing Hill, Judge Peter Crabtree said, "I accept you were in emotional turmoil, but you subjected your former partner to a sustained assault and you threatened to kill her."
25% of island children are obese. Almost a quarter of 4- and 5-year-old island children and 1/3 of 10- and 11-year-olds are overweight or obese, and the problem is much worse in poorer areas. Some 43% of Year 6 children living in the Newport East Ward are too heavy, more than double the 21% in the West Wight. At reception age, 12% of children in Cowes West and Gurnard are overweight or obese, compared with 32% in Newport East. According to the island's annual public health report, 11% of Year 8 children have been bullied about their weight, rising to 19% in Year 10. Nationally, 22% of reception children aged 4 and 5 are overweight or obese, compared with 24% on the island. For Year 6 children aged 10 and 11, the figure is 33% locally and nationally. The report, "We Can't Wait," spelt WEIGHT, to act, calls for a comprehensive effort to tackle physical inactivity among children and young people. It stresses the need for physical activity and healthy eating in schools, coupled with personal, social and health education and a focus on mental health and well-being. The UK Chief Medical Officer has recommended that children up to 5 years should be active for 3 hours a day by walking, swimming or playing, and older children aged 5 and over for an hour. Fewer than 1 in 5 Year 6 children are getting enough exercise, and by Year 10 it's fewer than 1 in 10. Adults should aim for 150 minutes of physical activity a week. Currently, 1 in 3 island adults are deemed inactive, with 33% doing less than 30 minutes of exercise. 66% of island adults are overweight or obese, slightly higher than the national average of 65%. The report warns that the Isle of Wight Council has failed to ensure that children have the best start, as inactivity and obesity risked future health problems. In 2010, 121 deaths could have been prevented if residents were as active as they should be, including deaths from heart disease, cancer and diabetes, and £2.6 million would be saved in health costs.
And decay puts church on a risk register. One island church has been added and one near it taken off Historic England's Heritage at Risk Register for the South East. The Church of St Mary and St Raedgon, Whitwell, has been placed on the register, while the neighbouring St John the Baptist Church, Knighton, has been removed after extensive renovation. Mainly built from the local green sandstone with a tiled roof, the Grade 2 listed Whitwell Church is at risk due to stone decay and water penetration. It was formed from 2 medieval chapels built side by side and largely rebuilt in the 15th and the 16th centuries. More than half the buildings on the at-risk register are places of worship. Historic England's Claire Charlesworth said, "The register helps us to target resources to those sites which are most threatened. We are delighted to have removed so many places of worship from the register this year in the South East. Much of this success was achieved through giving expert advice for the Heritage Lottery Fund's grants for places of worship scheme. Although this scheme has now closed, we continue to work with the HLF and the communities who care for these important buildings to improve their condition and to seek new and innovative uses for them." Historic England has given £612,000 in grant aid in 2017, which is more than ever before. The Hammerhead crane at Cowes received the largest grant, £117,000 for urgent structural repairs. On the register are St Saviour's Church, Shanklin, St Paul's, Shanklin, St John's, Sandown, St Thomas, Newport, All Saints, God's Hill, St Mary's, Ryde, St James's, East Cowes, St Mary's, Brading, St Boniface Old Church, Bonchurch, Holy Trinity, Ryde, Holy Trinity, Ventnor, Norris Castle, East Cowes, 2 Bold Barrows near Puck House, Fishbourne, a medieval settlement, East Ashy, Ryde, Northwood House, Cowes, the Hammerhead Crane, Cowes, Baldoner Battery, Shulfleet, Yaverland Battery, Swainston Manor Park and Garden, remains of Old Core Abbey, Binstead, plus Ryde, Brading, Carriagebrook, Cowes, Godsill and Newport conservation areas.
Southern Water Help for Age UK. Southern Water has pledged £10,000 to a lifeline project to reach isolated elderly people. The cash was awarded to Age UK Isle of Wight to provide a minibus service to take people to the charity's social clubs. It runs clubs in Ryde, Cowes, Ventnor and Freshwater and hopes to expand the scheme to Shanklin and Newport. Age UK Isle of Wight Head of Income Generation, Maria Bunce, said, "Our clubs can be a lifeline for those encountering social isolation. This funding will enable us to provide our clients with a door-to-door transport service, removing any worry over cost and making the clubs more accessible to people within our communities. Southern Water staff will also volunteer as befrienders and helping with other Age UK Isle of Wight projects, including Men in Sheds and the memory groups for dementia sufferers."
And helping to protect the vulnerable, the scheme that provides vulnerable and elderly people with free fire safety and crime prevention equipment has launched its new van. The Bobby scheme, run by the Blue Lamp Trust, provides free home security and long-life smoke alarms to people. The service includes the fitting of various equipment, including locks, spy holes, door chains, smoke alarms, and much more, all free of charge, to people who are vulnerable, due to age or circumstance, people who are disabled, victims of burglary, repeat victims of crime, and victims of domestic abuse. The island fitter used to share a van with the Isle of Wight Fire and Rescue Service, but now has been provided with his own van, thanks in part to donations from the Wight Aid Foundation and the island's High Sheriff. Anyone who would like to refer a friend or family member and is unsure whether they meet the referral criteria can contact the Bobby scheme by calling 0300 777 0157.
Shower gift for Nepal villagers. A team of islanders are travelling to a remote village in Nepal to build its first solar-powered hot shower. Sandy Patterson and Gary Lee went to Nepal last year to visit the village of Soloban, and they realised that many basic facilities they took for granted were not available to the villagers. On their return to the island, they decided to start a project to bring some facilities to Soloban. The pair formed a group and will be leaving for Nepal on November 17th. To get to Soloban, they have to fly into Kathmandu, take a light aircraft to a remote airfield, and then trek for 3 days, staying in basic huts, before climbing a near-vertical cliff up to the village. The volunteers are paying all their own expenses and for Sherpa support to help carry the parts for the shower. The trip requires the group to have good stamina and endurance, so they have been training for the past 9 months, including Walk the Wight. Island businesses DN Associates and Data Warm Isle of Wight designed the shower and are the main sponsors of the project, with Data Warm supplying the plumbing equipment. Another sponsor is the Isle of Wight NHS Trust, which has given medical advice and spare equipment to take to the villagers. Alison Geddes, who is organising support from the UK while the team is abroad, said the donations and support has shown us generosity by the island to a place many have never been to or even heard of, that has been so refreshing in these apparently egocentric times.
And praise for a good primary school. A school community is celebrating Ofsted's success. 9 Acres Primary School, which is in Newport, was judged to be good overall with an outstanding provision in its early years learning. Head teacher Beth Dyer was praised for her effective leadership, leading a strong and coherent team and also cohesive team who together share a relentless commitment to improving outcomes for pupils. Teachers knew their pupils well and used resources successfully to ensure students made good progress in reading, writing and mathematics, according to the report. Children in the early years made excellent progress, and leaders were highly ambitious and provided children with an outstanding start to their education. Teaching had improved since the last inspection and was constantly good, with all pupils making good progress in English, maths and the wider curriculum. The most able pupils were taught well. Teachers presented them with tasks which usually made them think hard. As a result, those pupils demonstrated positive attitudes to learning and made strong progress. Pupils told inspectors they felt safe and said bullying was rare. Governors were said to be highly ambitious and challenged school leaders rigorously about pupils' progress and outcomes. The early years provision at 9 Acres was described as exceptionally well led and managed. The report said children are kept safe and are cared for very well in the early years. Other praise in the report was given to the school's strong safeguarding culture. Mrs. Dyer said, "As head teacher, I am very proud of our staff. Every member has worked incredibly hard to improve and develop the school, demonstrating huge commitment and team spirit. Our staff are talented, caring and always go the extra mile. Our Ofsted success is a real team effort." And she added, "We intend to build on this report, maintaining what we do well and improving and developing the school even further."
Improvements needed at home. A Sandown care home has been told to make improvements. Beaufort House, which cares for up to 6 people with learning disability or autistic spectrum disorder, was rated as requiring improvement after an unannounced inspection. The Broadway care home was only registered in August 2016, and this was its first inspection by the Care Quality Commission. Inspectors rated the service good on safety and its caring environment, but said it should be more effective, more responsive, and its leadership needed improvement. There were enough staff to meet people's needs, and staff developed caring and positive relationships with people and were sensitive to their individual choices and treated them with dignity and respect. But the company which owns the care home was told to report to the CQC what action had been taken to ensure that staff received up-to-date training. It will also have to prove there are now more effective systems to ensure that staff responded to residents' needs.
And sexually assaulting a woman by touching her breast and trying to force her to kiss him before chasing her back to her flat landed a Sandown man in court. Oliver Lale, 38, of Fort Mews, admitted sexually assaulting a woman aged over 16 when he appeared before Island magistrates last Friday. The court heard the woman had been out with friends on January the 13th. As she was walking home, she became aware of Lale walking behind her, making sexual comments. She told him to go away, but he touched her and tried to kiss her, running behind her as she ran into the flats where she lived. Lale sat outside the flats, where he was confronted by the woman's boyfriend, who began fighting with him. Lale was heavily intoxicated during the incident, the court heard. Representing Lale, Barry Arnett said his client's actions were totally out of character. He said Lale speculated someone had spiked his drink. He said, "Mr. Lale wants to apologise for his behaviour. He has no memory of it. It is totally a one-off incident." The case was adjourned for sentence to the Isle of Wight Crown Court on December the 1st, and Lale was granted unconditional bail.
Royal approval for UKSA expansion. Major investment plans were unveiled at a celebratory event to mark UKSA's 30th anniversary, attended by charity patron Princess Anne. UKSA Chief Executive Ben Willows said the ambitious plans would allow the centre to change the lives of even more young people. Addressing almost 200 supporters, trustees, ambassadors and past students, he said, "The first phase will create flexible accommodation on our site, with work beginning in late 2018. The improved facilities will enable us to train more youth groups, young apprentices and professional clients." The Princess Royal said it was important that the waterfront site at Cowes was improved in the long term. She said, "In order to be able to spread the ability to encourage, to teach, we need to supply the appropriate levels of accommodation." She also praised the centre, stating, "There is something really inspiring about the place and the opportunity that it offers young people." Nearly 200 people attended the anniversary event, which coincided with the 150,000th student being welcomed through UKSA's doors. That's a United Kingdom Sailing Academy, by the way. Mr. Willows added, "I would like to thank each of you for your continued support over the last 30 years, as we have evolved from a centre offering dinghy courses to 1,500 children each year to becoming the UK's leading maritime training centre and transforming the lives of more young people than ever." The event was hosted at Trinity House in London.
And memorials banned. Roadside memorials to loved ones who have died on the roads have been banned. This week, the Isle of Wight Council approved a new policy to remove any permanent memorial or tribute which could distract drivers. Small floral tributes or soft toys, as long as they are not at road junctions or whatever maintenance takes place, will be allowed for a limited time. The decision was made under delegated powers and raised no objections from councillors.
And that's all from us, so it's goodbye from Sunara.
Goodbye from Barry. And also I hope that you all have a very enjoyable weekend and the sunshine that has now appeared will prevail. Thank you.
And now it's part 2 for this week's local paper. And the speakers are...
Den, New Girl.
And Peter Bobbin. And here are some letters. One from a Mr. Holloway of Yarmouth, who says, "I was involved in an accident at Vittlefields Cross, Forest Road, on September the 29th at about 9:15 a.m. and I would like to thank all those people who stopped to ask if I was okay, especially the lady who offered me a cup of tea. Thank you all. If anybody has any footage, please call me on 760510.
And this is from Margaret Bryan at East Cowes on the inadequate plan for public toilets. I see Newport Parish Council is seeking to improve the public toilets in Newport Town Centre by demolishing the present block in Post Office Lane and replacing it with one cubicle for men, one for women and one for disabled. This comes after the closure of the South Street toilets with no replacement. Can we please stop spending public money on designing woefully inadequate public toilets and get on with providing sufficient facilities to ensure the council taxpayers, visitors and festival attendants remain dignified and healthy in our county town? Opening up the Post Office Lane area to provide a pleasant vista does neither.
And Ian Mickle of Totland says EU brain drain on East Europe. Oh, he's worried about that. Your report on the County Press, the 20th of October, highlighted the fall in EU nationals joining the payroll of the Isle of Wight National Health Service Trust, since the referendum makes a valid point relating to how the UK economy will have to realign post-Brexit. However, much of the focus before, during and after the vote was about the potential downsiders for healthcare in the UK in the event of Brexit, with EU nationals making up around 5% of the medical workforce of the National Health Service. Not one column inch was devoted to the malign effect EU membership had on the accession countries. For example, according to the president of the Romanian College of Physicians, between 2011 and 2014, the number of doctors in Romanian hospitals fell from 21,400 to 14,400, and according to the British Medical Journal, by 2016, up to 30,000 Polish doctors had emigrated. And also, in 2016, Istvan Eger, president of the Chamber of Hungarian Physicians, claimed since Hungary joined the EU, the number of highly qualified specialists who had left the country was estimated at 5 to 10,000. While there are still many advocates of Remain, they should look beyond the effects of Brexit to the UK and look at the effects that membership of the EU has on less wealthy nations. How would the Remain camp feel if such a medical brain drain was affecting the UK in the way it has clearly affected the countries of Central and Eastern Europe?
And here's an interesting question for you all from Mrs. Valerie Clay in Stoke-on-Trent. She asks, what was the factory called? I wonder whether your paper could help me. I have been coming to the island on holiday for 60 years, and on my last visit 3 weeks ago, my daughter and I tried to remember the name of the company that made toilets and perfume, etc. I think it was at or near Binstead, on an industrial estate. We used to go on coach trips to visit it and buy their products. I think it was in the 1970s. We spent all holiday trying to think of the name, and it is still driving me mad even now. Hope you can help me out.
And Mike Chandler of Newport has sent a very short letter. He says, while reading with disbelief on the County Press of 20th of October, the cash-strapped Isle of Wight National Health Service has announced plans to move its top team into new offices at the cost of £60,000. I was reminded of the phrase rearranging the deck chairs as the Titanic was sinking.
This is from Charles Cook from Haylands Farm in Ryde. In harmony with our cause. And he says, I would like to congratulate Wight Harmony on its 40th anniversary and for supporting Haylands Farm and its parent charity IW Mencap over those 40 years, donating well over £50,000. Without this support and that of island people, we would not be in the position to help and support island families and individuals in need. Friday, October the 20th was a very special night at Medina Theatre, as it hosted the anniversary concert with various acts on stage, ending with Wight Harmony and friends. Well done, and thank you all who attended. A donation was presented to Haylands Farm at the end of the show. We were not informed of this, but it did not surprise us. It's what they do. Last but not least, we at Haylands would like to thank each member, past and present, for their generosity and continued support.
Yes, and D. Armstrong, who lives in Ryde, says, how to cut Newport traffic nightmare. Stay awake, I suppose. No. Reference to terrible traffic situation around Newport early in the mornings and 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Surely in this day and age it is not impossible to find funds to build a bridge across the Medina. My solution would be a roundabout at Binfield Corner with a road leading down to the river. Then a bridge across to the area at the bottom of the showground on the Cowes Road, and a road to join the main Newport Road to Cowes Road with a roundabout. Making it a toll bridge would help to offset the costs, and I'm sure commuters would be only too happy to pay to speed up their journey. An alternative could be a roundabout on the East Cowes Road, just before Whippingham, and then a road to the river to such a bridge access on the west bank to remain the same. And people talk of a bridge or a tunnel to the mainland, but that would be a terrible disaster. We already have more than enough vehicles on our narrow roads and lanes.
Right, this is from Councillor Carl Love of East Cowes. Wootton for West. I agree the Isle of Wight should have 2 representatives within Parliament. This would best represent our communities and give the island a stronger voice. The placing of this Isle of Wight boundary line is somewhat controversial for many people. It seems logical to me to place the majority of coastal holiday resorts into one constituency and the majority of green belt in the other. The revised plan now including Wootton in the east. This needs some further explanation as to why the rethink. What has changed or influenced this amendment and why? I think our island population should be told more about the rationale behind placing the boundary lines and who has been involved with making this decision. This must not be party political, and it has to be transparent. East and West have very different characteristics. One is large and has a significant number of second homes, green and leafy. The other is more urban. It would be easy to read lots into the boundary changes. The eligibility of voting numbers suggests Wootton should in fact be in the west. As there is a low response to the Boundary Commission, England consultation online comments, there should now be a more positive engagement.
And here's a letter from a writer called Francis Emery, who lives in West Sussex. You go, does he get this paper from West Sussex? Inspiring women worthy of the island's support, he says. Earlier in the year, I was invited by the Royal Hotel Ventnor to give readings from my book, Down on Red Bucket Farm. Now, this is something that I have often done on the mainland, so I quickly agreed. I had, in the past, helped to raise money for breast cancer support through book sales at my readings, and so contacted your very own group of ladies, Applegate. Consequently, on Saturday, October the 14th, I spent some very pleasurable time in the company of those lovely brave ladies, many of whom turned up at the venue. All had been to hell and back, their own way fighting cancer, with some quite frightening tales to tell, and yet all bounced into the hotel full of smiles, and we all had a good laugh together as I reeled out my comic verse with one of their group, Alison, joining in with me. Thus I was able to donate their wonderful cause from book sales. And these wonderful women had such an effect on myself and on my family and friends, I have let Mary know I will gladly return to the island and give them my support again. You see, as a family we had come to know how vital these support groups are. Such groups are indeed spread all over the UK, and the good people of the Isle of Wight need to know that within Applegate lives the love and care to help those who need them. However, Applegate needs your help too, and I know all donations are very welcome.
Edward Lyon from Sandown asks, can masons help rejuvenate town? And he says, I am dismayed our boating lake area is up for sale. It is one of the only wild places left in Sandown and has been valued by locals and holidaymakers alike. It is also home to swans, ducks and coots. With sloping sides and an island, many more species would go there. Sale of such land for building in competition with the town eyesores means these are likely to remain underdeveloped. Surely, if Sandown is serious about regaining its former popularity, it is vital to smarten the town up, rather than destroy the few attractive bits which remain. With that regard, I appeal to the Freemasons. Couldn't they invite those owners who leave properties derelict, if not already members, to join them and encourage them to rejuvenate the town?
And now it's time for looking back. These are the clips from the county press 100 years ago, on October the 27th, 1917. The Admiral of Osborne College stated to the House of Commons he would favour an entirely new site for the Naval Academy. Captain Douglas Hall stated conditions at the Council College had been investigated and several structural alterations carried out. The number of cadets had also reduced to 300 to reduce the chance of epidemics. However, the Admiral believed a new naval college should be built on an entirely new site. And two islanders, previously strangers, met while serving in France, and an islander serving in France wrote to the county press, "The sons of Vectis are at present widely scattered, owing to the war." He was attending a diversional sports meeting when he came face to face with Lieutenant Colonel C. Harbert of the Isle of Wight Rifles.
And 75 years ago, on October the 31st, 1942, the island reached its rosehip target, collecting 2 tonnes over the summer. The plant was considered essential due to the need for rosehip syrup, which was used during the war as a vitamin C supplement. Children helped in the collection, although many of the bushes were out of their reach, so parental help was needed. The War Office agreed to sponsor the formation of an Isle of Wight Army Cadet Force. Rapid strides were made toward the formation, and soon 2 successful camps were held in Sandown and Cowes.
And 50 years ago, if you remember, November the 4th, 1967, for the first time since it started operating, the Yarmouth-Lymington car ferry was marooned at Yarmouth Quay by a gale. With a number of cars and passengers on board, the ferry left Yarmouth just after 6 p.m. The ferry was forced to return to the island a short while later. And an international boxer visited Totland. Brian Sandy, the Portsea International, attended a boxing event at Totland Bay Hotel, and the event proved a great attraction.
25 years ago, on November the 30th, 1992, a rare breed of goat arrived on the island to take up residence at Bonchurch Down. The long-haired horned British goats were released on the down to help conserve the grassland landscape, which was threatened by scrubby vegetation and home oak trees. Shanklin's Royal British Legion lost all hope of reclaiming the £11,090 for their lost 5-day trip to Euro Disney. The firm they had booked through had folded and all compensation disappeared. The investigation was put on hold because the holiday operator remained in Nigeria.
Yeah. And only 10 years ago, October the 26th in 2007, you might remember this bit, the new global TV channel was scheduled to go live from the Isle of Wight in December, and the UK Entertainment Channel was set to be a mixture of family entertainment, films and live TV. There was also announced a new island news programme. And the search continued for a new home for the Isle of Wight Bus Museum. The museum celebrated its 10th anniversary and held the day, attracting crowds of people to enjoy trips on historic vehicles. Council plans saw the museum need to find a new permanent home. And parents of children at a number of West Wight schools were encouraged to have more hands-on involvement in their children's education as part of a National Family Learning Week. The school held activities and 40 parents took part in both literacy and numeracy lessons. Characters from childhood. Brian Greening looks back at Newport's recent past and writes about a way of life so different to how it is nowadays. Further to a previous article I wrote bemoaning the loss of local characters, I was recently alerted to two more who were regulars in Newport during my youth. These were elderly couple, brother and sister, Tom and Emma Beard. Emma was around 9 years older than Tom, and they lived in a tiny house opposite the gates to the old cattle market in South Street. And there were times before any state handouts, so the couple added to their meagre weekly income by purchasing a couple of gallons of paraffin from Mr. Neal, whose shop was in Lower St. James's Street, and then bringing it home and selling it in quantities of a pint to their neighbours. And it should be remembered many houses never had the benefit of his electricity and used paraffin lamps as a means of indoor lighting. Indeed, in my childhood home we had no electricity until 1951, but did have gas lighting that came from a screwing on the fitting those most delicate gas mantles. Tom and Emma were an extremely religious couple, and they would often be seen sitting outside their house with an old trumpet-horned gramophone, playing records of hymns and gospel singing. School pal John French lived in nearby Abraham's Court and later Prospect Road, and he recalled he and a few of his school pals would go into the couple's front room at Christmas and sing carols, and be rewarded with an apple or orange or even an old penny. Imagine such goings-on today, but Tom and his sister really were a harmless old couple. In later life, Tom could be seen pushing his older sister around, not only in the town, but the island in general, in a wheelchair. However, the time came when Tom had a stroke, and John swears Emma then vacated the wheelchair she had occupied for several years and pushed Tom around. With us when John was telling his story, and my good friend Bill Shepherd, who was fascinated to find someone who'd actually been born in Abraham's Court. Bill was born in Orchard Street, next door to Dyer's Court, and I recall in Holyrood Street there was a Flux's Court. Almost next door to Abraham's Court there was a Wells Court, the name giving glamour to what was often blocks of poor houses in groups of 3 to 8. John recalled Abraham's Court was simply 3 houses that shared a common water tap and toilet, and the houses lacked gas or electricity. He said that things came to the head literally in Abraham's Court when an old pensioner who lived in one of the houses one morning pulled the chain in the toilet and the cistern fell on his head. Many of these recruits of such poor housing were eventually moved into the newly built Prospect Road around 1934. John and his parents did not leave the Abraham's Court for Prospect Road until around 1939, when it was demolished so the fire station could be built. Even though their new homes had a bath and electricity, the latter only provided 3 lights downstairs, and apparently electricity upstairs was considered a luxury the council could not afford, and their toilet was still outside, however. Although not strictly a court, I can recall talking to a member of the Pointer family who once lived in the oyster shell cottages in Medina Avenue, a terrace of 10 very old houses that shared but 2 back-to-back outdoor toilets. This man told me his grandfather would try and get up at 4:30 every morning in order to be first across the yard to use the thunderbox. The last term was one of over 100 slang names that I found to describe the smallest room in the house. Bill maintains the discharge from these toilets at one time simply went into the stream that was at the rear of these houses and was allowed to meander down to Coppins Bridge and out into the River Medina. Naturally, the world's health and safety had not been born, and the building of Prospect Road, that some later called Incubator Alley, because of the number of children that lived there, was to benefit Barton School and Newport in general for being home to some of the finest footballers in the island. Names such as Deacon, Ash, Strickland, French and the Perkins brothers readily came to mind, and no doubt it had forgotten others. The building of the fire station proved beneficial to those young boys, as the fire forecourt provided the best all-weather football pitch around, as traffic passing by amounted to a handful of cars every hour. This was the climate in which Tom and Emma saw out of their lives, surrounded by children, very little traffic, and content to sit outside their home and play hymns. A very simple pleasure enjoyed by 2 or more of Newport's old characters. Well, that does sound very exciting. How wonderful it must be to live in like Newport when those are going on. 4.
We're on to My View, which is a panel of columnists take it in turn to give their take on life as it is played out on the Isle of Wight. This is Alan Marriott's view. Is one MP, one island the way forward? The mysterious Malcolm Mime opinioned in his recent column about the follies of Boundary Commission England's BCE plans for 2 MPs for the island. His beef was not with the idea per se, but with the drawings of the border, placing Wootton and East Cowes in the Wild West. Queen Victoria would not have been amused, said Monsignor Mime. Since then, BCE has literally changed its line, meaning Wootton is due to be in the East Wight constituency. Our columnist got a bit of a duffing up from the Beast of Bradford, Bob Blizzard, in last week's letters page, but I would like to propose a different solution altogether. Just leave it alone. A few years ago, when the plans for a shake-up were first mooted, the county press fronted a One Wight campaign. The idea of this was to keep the Isle of Wight as a single constituency, instead of the original plan for making part of the west of the island to be shaved off and dumped in with the admittedly beautiful New Forest. There was much delight when the campaign was even more successful than expected, with the next recommendation being for 2 Isle of Wight seats, a result few saw coming. But sometimes less is more. Yes, we would get double bubble at Westminster, but what if, for instance, Labour, Greens or a resurgent Lib Dem party were to take the East? I would hazard a guess the world would need a tilt on its axis before the West was shaved anything other than blue. I could foresee a situation where one side's aspirations would not be in tune with the other. For example, let's imagine austerity's shackles are taken off and 50 million is available for a new Isle of Wight University campus. Would this lead to unseemly squabbling about whether it's placed on the reinvigorated Newport riverbank or used as the primer for a change in Sandown's fortune in a post-bucket and spade holiday world? Would we have the right honourable member for Wight East decrying Newport's traffic system, while the West's representative hit back with some point scoring over scruffy Sandown, or the distance from the ferry ports? Or what if there were a split in opinion over the ever-hot topic of a fixed link? Such disharmony would not send a very good message out to those who govern us in London. I know the prospect of change rarely sits well on the Isle, but there is a case here that 1 MP, 1 island is not such a bad thing. During September, I had the great fortune to have a once-in-a-lifetime holiday in Australia. I was mightily impressed with so much of Australia. Its people were friendly, the climate was wonderful, and the natural gifts amazing. The first of these attributes has lots to do with the second and third. However, it is easy to take these things for granted, the Isle of Wight being Australia in a microcosm. But the Aussies I encountered didn't seem to fall into the trap. The greetings in shops and restaurants in Queensland was often "another day in paradise," which may seem a little cheesy but was in fact a chest-puffing recognition of how lucky these folks were. Maybe our forward-facing colleagues in tourist-dependent shops, pubs and eateries would do well to take a little lesson.
Mm-hmm. And Jonathan Young has written something about, he says, beer plus buses equals bouncers. I had cause about a month ago to delve into one of the dustier corners of the Isle of Wight's Council's responsibilities, the regulation of licensed premises. There had been an application to expand the activities of a modest rural catering venue, and I came across something which I didn't appear to make much sense at all. it was a slightly surreal experience because what seemed to be foreshadowed was a late-night jumping joint complete with the door supervisors and bouncers to you and me, who transplanted lock, stock and barrel from somewhere where they're used to putting it up with that sort of thing. The number of door supervisors to be engaged on any occasion began the ponderous police recommended condition. Shall be determined by the licence holder, taking into account such factors as the nature and duration of licensable activities proposed, the number, age and character of persons likely to attend. Bouncers. Just up the road from me. What on earth are they planning? We don't want none of that round here, thank you very much. It wouldn't be the first use of this particular sledgehammer to crack a nut, as the papers for a Portsmouth licensing appeal show. The application has had to employ licensed door supervisors, the committee was told, for the purposes of monitoring and supervising a Women's Institute conference taking place between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. A city council meeting and the counting of votes at the local elections, and in relation to civic and mayoral events held within the Guildhall and Lord Mayor's banqueting suite. I don't know about Portsmouth Women's Institute, but hereabouts I reckon the membership would be more than capable of handling their own internal discipline, and possibly everybody else's as well. So picture the scene. A handful of spotty wannabe hellraisers up against a posy of ladies of a certain age, armed with fearsome glare, uncompromisingly folded arms and sharp tongue. A one-sided contest if ever I saw one. My own dear mother, a fully paid-up member of the sorority, would, had she still been with us, have been right up there in the front with her killer line, "How many of these glasses of beer have you had, duck?" Anyway, that was last month. Then just a fortnight ago, everything fell into place. Beer and buses came to town, or rather villages. Right across the island there were reports of vintage charabancs chugging around the place, complete with discordant open mic rendition and a heady cocktail of beer fumes and diesel fumes belching from every orifice. Impromptu desk dancing on pub patios, huge joyous queues at every bus stop with the sort of capers there more suited to the 1960s holiday camp talent show. And with my own eyes I witnessed a couple, mature in age only, climbing aboard a piggyback style after the driver told them he only had room for one more. It will, of course, have made perfect sense at the time, as they roistered their way over the downs to goodness knows where, but would they remember any of it in the morning? And there was me thinking these unsung heroes of the Isle of Wight Council's licensing department had just hoiked that bouncer condition down from a neglected archive and decided to apply it for completely unfathomable reasons. Silly me! How prescient of them to have spotted the potential for things to get so quickly and unexpectedly out of hand. No fooling them about the nature, number, age and character of people's likely to attend. Certainly a whole army of door supervisors is going to be needed to head off this threat to our rural idyll, the invasion of the countryside by the newly emboldened urban masses. Women, enlist today! Your island needs you!
These are alternative ways to holiday, and I'll just describe the pictures to you so you can envisage them while I speak. The first one is inside one of Vintage Vacations caravans, and it's, as you would imagine, something like a 1940s caravan with the twin bunks either side, covered with those lovely knitted square blankets that everyone did in the 40s and 50s. The next one is Fiona Headington's treehouse in Wootton, which is a lovely wooden shed on piles in the snow scene. Carol Granger's pig ark are, as you can imagine, the curved, I think they were corrugated iron type covers that used to shelter pigs. One of the Airstreams at Vintage Vacations is a slightly more up-to-date silver caravan, looking very smart. And then Debbie the Caravan at Vintage Vacations is a lovely old, again I think it's 1940s, almost round little caravan. Very, very quaint looking. So from pig arks to tree houses, yurts to shepherd's huts, the Isle of Wight has seen an explosion in the number of people opening up their properties to tourists thanks to the website Airbnb. This site allows anyone to advertise their house, spare room or other property as a holiday home or short-term let to millions of people around the world. It represents a huge shift in the island's tourism market, with guest houses, hotels and traditional B&Bs now facing competition from anyone with a spare room. But it has also proved to be a valuable source of income for many islanders. Carol Grange joined the website a few months ago after her 16-year-old son Charlie custom-built a pig ark for her in Northwood. She has achieved Airbnb's superhost status, which marks her out as an outstanding host with more than 80% 5-star reviews. She advertises exclusively on the site and said she was surprised by the number of bookings. The ark sits alongside those for her pigs, and she said young families enjoyed the freedom of seclusion. I think the more unusual properties grab people's attention, and it's been very popular, mainly with young families, she said. Fiona Headington is another long-standing island Airbnb superhost. Her Wootton tree house is fully equipped with Wi-Fi, power shower, log-burning stove and a full kitchen, the inside of which was handcrafted by her husband Will. Nestling in woodland, the tree house offers luxury and seclusion. She was approached by the company in 2012 and attracted to the low rate of commission on offer. She uses a variety of websites to advertise her tree house, including TripAdvisor. However, she maintains that Airbnb is one of the best. Fiona said, "A recent trend we have noticed over the past year is a lot of islanders coming to stay. I think it's because they like to get away for a few days and don't have to worry about the ferry. I think people really like the more unusual one-off places. The tree house offers a quiet getaway, while still keeping those home comforts like heating and a comfy bed." Superhost Helen Cunningham runs Vintage Vacations with her husband Fraser. Their field in Ryde is home to what the Independent dubbed the country's coolest caravan park, with a variety of vintage Airstreams and two 1940s style caravans nicknamed Debbie and Gloria. Aimed at budget travellers, Debbie and Gloria are listed on Airbnb for just £40 a night for 2 people. The Airstreams are charged between £65 and £85 a night. We first joined Airbnb in 2008. We were contacted by the company themselves, said Helen. Initially, nothing really happened. Then about 4 years ago, there was an explosion in bookings. The most popular listings are their budget caravans. However, Helen said many return again, having seen the Airstreams on offer. Her time on the website has been largely positive, although there have been a few minor issues. Helen said, "We did have a problem with a large group of younger people and I had to request extra cleaning money. However, Airbnb backed me up and the matter was sorted out within minutes." Although Helen spoke positively of her Airbnb experience, she did wonder what the future held for the website. She added, "I do wonder about the impact of the app. Many people are running a proper business from their spare rooms and this will be having an impact on the more traditional B&Bs. Around the world, there have been stories of communities struggling to come to terms with the shift from traditional hosting to using Airbnb, leading to legislation. Visit Isle of Wight boss David Thornton said there needed to be greater regulation in the UK. Tourism hospitality is a professional business. It requires standards, regulations, professional cooperation and collaboration to work effectively. Airbnb offers an attractive way of accessing what appears to be quality accommodation for less, but consumers need to realise this is a buyer beware scenario. Sally Beeston, chair of the Shanklin Hoteliers and Accommodation Association, said more needed to be done to ensure all accommodation providers meet the same standards. Our members have discussed this issue at length, although we have yet to notice an impact on business. It's an unlevel playing field.
And here's a number of interesting things that might be happening soon. Spend an evening with the music of Dolly Parton and Kelly Rogers at Medina Theatre. The tribute to the country legends promises to be a thigh-slapping show that brings together the glamour and personality of Dolly with Kenny's charisma and energy. Islands in the Stream is at Medina Theatre next Saturday, November the 4th.
An orphan-turned heiress, a talk on the fascinating story of Elizabeth Chandler, an American heiress to the Astor fortune, who grew up an orphan in Bonchurch, will be given at Ventnor Arts Club on 2 evenings. During her talk entitled The Orphaned Heiress in Bonchurch, American author and historian Donna Lucy will talk about Chandler's eventful and colourful life. The focus of the talk will be on whether Chandler was orphaned when at school in Bonchurch. The talks are on Wednesday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m.
And Winter Ludfest in 2017 will raise money to keep hearts beating. And the King Lud pub in Ryde is bringing back the Winter Ludfest, hoping to make this year's event the biggest ever. Next Sunday, November the 5th, from noon to midnight, Ludfest will feature musicians, comedians, poets and more. The event will support the pub's Beating Heart Fund to bring a defibrillator to Ryde Esplanade. Landlords Sam and Susie Mackay said, "This year's Winter Ludfest looks to be the biggest yet, with more bands and acts than ever before. Each Ludfest is dedicated to fundraising for local causes. After too many close calls, mostly during antisocial hours, our patrons and Lud committees are striving to get a defibrillator here. Ryde firefighters have already contributed £300 towards the £1,000 target, and it's hoped Ludfest will raise the rest. Acts include Fetch, Feck, Daryl Wynne, Madden Me, Sabotage, Colne, The Daughters of Soil, IFP, Little Martha, Sexy Pretty Things, and King Cuna."
And charities are to benefit from a Cowes pub gig. A night of music and fun at a Cowes pub is set to raise cash for 2 charities. Naomi House Children's Hospice near Winchester and the British Heart Foundation will benefit from the November the 9th event at the Anchor, organised by Naomi House supporter Joe Landy of East Cowes and Dana Edkins. Rick Stanbridge, Damien Paul, Spike Oatley and Kev Sutton with Nathan Dove are amongst the musicians confirmed to appear. The Anchor is donating cash from every curry meal sold on the night to boost the coffers. The event runs from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. and entrance is free, with a bucket collection for the charities. That's the November the 9th.
And it's a piping hot afternoon when the Medina Tattoo returns next Sunday, November the 5th, for the afternoon of inspiring music to raise money for challenge and adventure. There will be a pipe and drum performances from Hampshire Caledonian and the Rose and Thistle Pipe Band from Portsmouth. White Diamonds Marching Band will join in with the Royal British Legion standard bearers. Bembridge-based vocal cords, coached by Sam Howard, will be singing Bloodstone. Border Morris dancers will entertain before a grand finale performed by the Wight Hot Pipes. And the compere for the afternoon is the piano man, Matt Black, from Bournemouth.
Right, there's a treat for Pink Floyd fans on the Isle of Wight. A Pink Floyd tribute band is appearing at Medina Theatre, Newport on Thursday. The Wall of Floyd, which is based in Portsmouth, features 6 musicians with a collective total of more than 75 years of studio and live concert experience, and a passion for Pink Floyd's music. Following the successful nationwide Earth and Space UK tour, the band is performing its last show of the year on the island. With an impressive light show, the band will play all the classics from Pink Floyd's back catalogue of albums, which includes The Wall and Dark Side of the Moon. The show starts 7:30 p.m. on Thursday.
And a blues ensemble hopes to make new friends when it performs music from the Mississippi Delta in back-to-back concerts at Ventnor Arts Club next weekend. The trio Mistra, pronounced Mistra, which gained worldwide acclaim for its debut album Call of the Blue, released last year, will be performing to Island Delta Blue fans next Friday, November the 3rd, and on Saturday, November the 4th. Call of the Blue gained radio airplay and plenty of press coverage in more than 40 countries. And the band, which comprises British blues innovator and slide guitarists Michael Messer, Hindustani slide guitar maestro Manish Pingle from Mumbai, and London-based tabla master Gurdain Singh Rayat, hit the number one spot in the iTunes Blues chart. Sometimes we hear a piece of music that makes such an impression on us, we have to track down the people who made the sound and do whatever it takes to bring them to the club. This is one just such occasion, said Stephen Isaac, Ventnor Arts Club. This is more than another meeting of musicians from different cultures. This is a band with a successful album and its own unique sound, an exhilarating and highly accessible fusion of blues and Hindustani classical music. And both shows start at 9 p.m.
And this is an item on at Minghella Theatre. This is a theatre revival, and it's for Green Forms and Say Something Happened. This is a double act bill of plays by Alan Bennett, directed by Graham Pountney, and it's Friday, November the 3rd to Sunday, November the 5th. That's Minghella Theatre, starting, it doesn't say what time it starts. Yes. Okay.
And that's all we have today for you. It's goodbye from me, Peter.
And it's goodbye from me, Den.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
This is the BBC.
This is In Touch, the magazine programme for people like me who are blind or partially sighted. I'm Peter Wight. Thanks for downloading this week's edition. Good evening. I spent last week in Australia and New Zealand making a documentary, but I also took the opportunity to see what's happening to visually impaired people on the other side of the world. So tonight, a different approach to welfare. It's based on the principle of insurance rather than state payouts. So will it work, and could it have implications here? And what happens when you're blind and caught up in a national emergency?
That gate used to come and meet up with the edge of the garage.
Right.
And there was a crack in the ground which, when my paths were redone, they've sealed it up again, but you could actually feel how far the ground had moved because there was a split in the ground. So things moved quite a lot.
Yeah, they did, didn't they? Terry McElroy, still picking up the pieces of her life after the devastation caused by the Christchurch earthquake over 6 years ago. But first, most countries rich enough to contemplate it have recognised that being disabled costs money. The need for special equipment, added transport costs, getting work done in the home which you can't do yourself. But deciding how to pay for that in a way that's fair has posed a problem. For the past 25 years, the UK has adopted the approach of state benefits, such as Disability Living Allowance, or DLA, now being replaced by PIPs, or Personal Independence Payments. But if you receive either of those benefits, you won't need me to tell you that almost since their introduction, there's been bitter political debate about who should get them and at what financial level. Well, now Australia, faced with the challenge of coming up with a national solution rather than leaving it to its individual states, has embarked on a new radical approach based on the principle of social insurance rather than benefits. Mary Ann Diamond of the National Disability Insurance Scheme, and who is herself blind, has been telling me how the scheme is intended to work and what it will cover.
It's not about a list of services that people choose or select from. It is about people with disabilities thinking about what their own goals are as an individual and what supports they might need to achieve them. So, for example, I might have a goal of employment. I want a job. You know, that's a big one for people who are blind with high unemployment figures in this country. So then if we have a conversation about, well, what is a blind person, if I want to achieve employment, what kind of supports would I need? I might need some O&M training to move around the community independently.
That's like just mobility training.
Yes. I might need some assistive technology, whether it be JAWS or Zoom Text or whatever. I might need some work experience. So there's a whole lot of supports that you might have to achieve your goal.
There are so many of those. I'm just trying to visualise how this would work, because, people, if it's about what you need and what you think you need, some people think they need more than others, and if you're left to assess it, how can that actually get delivered in a fair way?
So the legislation for the National Disability Insurance Scheme calls it, people will be provided the supports they require that are reasonable and necessary.
And who decides what's reasonable and necessary?
Well, that is through a conversation. It's because it's very individual. Like what you want and what you might need aren't always the same thing.
That's my point.
Yeah, no. But that's why it's individual and it's conversation based.
So you could say, I need to get out more. I need to go to the ball game. I need to.
Exactly. No. So exactly, you might say, well, one of my goals is to be independent in the community. I want to participate in my community. So what does that mean? I might have someone come with me the first time I go to the ball game. Sometimes you may need a couple of support sessions. Sometimes you may need an ongoing support session, depending on what your need is.
So is it working?
Well, it's too early to tell. Well, I would say yes. There is evidence that people are getting supports and services in a way they were not before. Many people coming into the scheme who have never received a service before. Over 100,000 people are currently on the scheme, and by 2019 we expect 460,000.
You said a very interesting thing. You said if you get stuff delivered early, then that will lessen the need for help later on. Can you just explain what that means and how that might work?
Okay, so what we identified quite early is that if we were able to provide supports to families and children between the age of 0 and 6, especially those with developmental delays and so on, they may get those supports and no longer need such intensive support as they're getting older. If we provide support to someone who goes blind soon after they go blind, then we may not be supporting them intensely for the rest of their lives, because we all might learn skills and so on. So it is about early intervention, whether it be children or when someone first acquires a disability, is really, as we know, important.
So how's it paid for?
So it's paid for by the monies from the state governments and territory governments and Commonwealth pooling all their disability services money together to run a national scheme, and all Australians who pay we call it Medibank, which is our national health insurance scheme, a levy on our health insurance towards the cost of the NDIS. It is estimated that the scheme will cost $22 billion a year once everyone's on the scheme. And there's no evidence to say that is still not the case. We have a lot of data collected by our actuaries all the time, and the Productivity Commission will probably come out saying that seems to be the best estimates to date.
So, in theory, it's paid for by everybody.
Yep.
Does that mean it's not contributory? It's not that you have had to contribute. It's not like paying into an insurance scheme.
That's right. We don't pay into an insurance scheme like some countries do. Our Medicare levy for our national health insurance scheme is paid by all taxpayers. Now, if you don't have a job and you don't pay tax, then you don't contribute.
But you might be just the person who would need it.
That's right, and you're still entitled to it. There's no thing that, you didn't make a contribution, you're not entitled. It is entitlement to all Australians.
Right. But it still seems to me that it could be the people who are best able to make a case for themselves will be the people who do best out of this kind of scheme.
Well, yes, but equally what we're seeing so far is that the people who come to their planning conversation, who have done some preparation and thinking, are the ones who are doing quite well and getting the needs they want. And I just want to emphasise, and I said at the convention, and that is, we shouldn't measure success on how many dollars you get. It's on outcomes. So just because you need something as a blind person may not be the same as I need as a blind person.
So just one more question. How does this relate to benefits? I mean, is this an attempt to replace the benefit scheme in the end?
No.
Benefits for visually impaired people?
So in Australia we have a disability support pension, and we have a category of that called disability support blind, and it does not impact on our income we earn. That has nothing to do with this scheme. So it's not there to replace it. The scheme is there to replace what used to be service providing organisations getting block money from state governments to provide services. This is about the money operated from a national level for supports and services, but in the control of the person with disability.
Mary Ann Diamond. Well, Neil Jarvis has been watching developments with interest. Neil left Britain for New Zealand to take up a role planning strategy for its Royal Foundation of the Blind. That's their equivalent of our RNIB. And New Zealand is watching its neighbour's new experiment with interest. So, does he think it's affordable?
What we're definitely already seeing is an explosion of take-up, which from our perspective as disabled people is fantastic. It means that disabled people are actually taking up something which they really should have had access to all along. But your question is very apposite, I think, because someone's going to have to pay for this. And I think my worry is that they will rob Peter to pay Paul. And we're already seeing examples of that where we know of advocacy organisations in places like New South Wales that are losing funding at the end of this financial year precisely because someone's got to find money to pay for the NDIS. And it's advocacy organisations that will actually assist disabled people to get what they need out of the system. So that's somewhat ironic.
Do you think this has an application? Is this something that we should be watching in the UK, given that we've got a system already?
I do. I think that the potential is brilliant. I think every single disabled person's organisation and every disabled person I know in Australia is very much in favour of the NDIS. What they are not in favour of is some of the practical limitations that already appear to be coming in. And, this is a scheme that's barely a few months old in terms of a national rollout, and already it's being undermined. And that so often is the case, we find, with things that are designed for us. So I think that we need to be not only watching out for what's potentially a really, really good scheme, but also watch out for what the pitfalls might be so that you can do it better in the UK and we can do it better in New Zealand. I remember, as you will, 20, 25 years ago, when blind people got access to DLA for the first time after the Mallinson case. And again, the explosion in take-up of DLA, quite rightly, but government never planned for that. And consequently, the application process became a nightmare for many disabled people. And we don't want to see that happening. So we hope that the process will be thought out properly, planned properly and delivered properly. If it is, it'll be a fantastic system. If it's not, it'll just be another bureaucratic nightmare.
Meanwhile, New Zealand itself has preoccupations. I don't know about you, but occasionally I've anxiously speculated about how, as a totally blind person, I would cope if caught up in a real emergency. Hasn't happened to me yet, but most of us hope we'll never have to find out. But in February 2011, many visually impaired New Zealanders in the city of Christchurch were forced to confront that reality when an earthquake struck. It cost 185 lives and it totally changed the landscape of the city they'd known all their lives. Well, one of those embroiled in the event was Terry McElroy. Terry is blind and she lives alone. Last week I went to see her, and even before I got inside her front door, it became obvious that even after more than 6 years, she was still dealing with the fallout from what happened that day.
That gate used to come and meet up with the edge of the garage.
Right.
And there was a crack in the ground which, when my paths were redone, they've sealed it up again, but you could actually feel how far the ground had moved because there was a split in the ground. So things moved quite a lot.
Well, they did, didn't they? Terry, accompanied by Christchurch's signature soundtrack, that of constant building work going on. Well, once inside, Terry told me what happened to her on what began as just an ordinary day.
I was at the Blind Foundation doing a computer course, and we were down in the lunchroom, and I had stood up to go and put something in the rubbish, and the ground started shaking. And I said, uh-oh, and I quickly stepped across, put my paper in the rubbish bin and went back to the table. And then by that stage, I was at the end of the table, going back to where my guide dog was, and the ground was shaking so much that all I could do was sit down and hang on to the table legs. And it went on for quite a while, and there was just this feeling of the ground was like big waves. We had other little ones in Christchurch, but nothing significant. It took us about 2.5 or 3 hours to get home by car. We were driving through big amounts of water, and it was something like I'd never been through anything like that before.
Did you know there were casualties?
Not at that stage. Unfortunately, we got the car without the radio, so we couldn't have radio updates at that stage. And the phone network was absolutely jammed. I'd tried several times just to call my family or my neighbour to let someone know that I was okay and see if they were. When I got back here, liquefaction had occurred. Liquefaction is the process of what the sediment that comes out of the ground. My driveway, there was liquefaction all over the place. So it's like this thick, muddy sort of goop. And when I got into the house, there wasn't a lot of damage to the house itself, but there were things that had fallen on the floor and broken. I chose to stay here rather than go and stay somewhere else. My guide dog got on my bed because that's where he felt safe.
What did it feel like to find your house like that?
Quite nerve-wracking, because I didn't know what I was going to find. When I first walked in the gate was jammed because the ground had moved, and so the gate wouldn't open. When we did get it open, it wouldn't then shut. And it was nerve-wracking because you've got everything in your house that you, some things you have an emotional attachment or a sentimental attachment to, and you just don't know what you're going to find. Is your radio going to be broken?
Well, that's a very typical reaction of a blind person, isn't it? I understand how you feel. You start thinking about equipment, stuff that you need to stay in touch. Radio, computer, I guess.
I started thinking about practical things. There was no power, no water, or the water we would have had to boil it. But it was stressful for everybody because you never knew when the next quake was coming. And so I would take a breath and just let it out and try and just keep going. It was interesting too because it was like this big animal shaking itself. Most of the time I would be inside when the quakes happened, and so, you know, the house would rattle and things like that. But occasionally I happened to be outside and the earth would just sort of shudder. It was quite an interesting phenomenon, really.
Interesting?
Yeah.
Were you scared?
No.
Why not?
Everyone's got their own different story, and I think if I had been hurt or trapped somewhere, it might have been a different story for me, but I wasn't. And so it wasn't scary for me.
I mean, in a way, that's the day itself. And what I understand really, that the real effects for you have come afterwards.
That's correct, yes. All the places that I could get to independently were just gone or inaccessible. I often used to go into the centre of Christchurch, to the Central Library or other destinations, and that area was just, you just couldn't go there. It was fenced off, it was out of bounds because buildings were unsafe. Our supermarket was completely trashed. It took 18 months to rebuild it, so to be able to go and get groceries and things like that, it was a bus trip. And I wouldn't go to places by myself. Going to a shopping mall with someone which has big high shelves and things, I felt quite claustrophobic and I just wanted to get home. It was the noise, the smell of the traffic fumes, the busyness, it just made me want to get home again.
In a way that you never had before?
Yes, and I don't feel like that now, but that was some of the after effects of the quake for me. Some of that is still the case now. Like, I don't go into the centre of the city by myself because there's still a lot of work happening. And also because at the moment I don't have a guide dog, I don't feel as confident to go out with my white cane. If I dwell on it too much, I can get quite sad and depressed about it, but You just have to look forward, I think. And one of the things that was quite stressful was dealing with all the after repairs and things like that, because there wasn't enough support of the right sort to get things done. When you walked up here, you may have seen the disgusting state of the driveway. That is repaired, and it's not really very good. And it's just having to deal with all that got very stressful, moving out of my house for repairs. So it didn't just happen for like 6 months. It went on, and it's those low-level things that can, drag on and on, that can actually get really stressful.
Terry McElroy, trying to make the best of things. Well, finally today, back on British soil, we've got some stop press news for you. Last February, my guest on this programme was Sally Harvey, who was then acting RNIB Chief Executive. We were discussing the RNIB's search for a permanent CEO. Are you likely to apply?
Big question. And I'm going to say yes at this point in time, because I'm hugely proud. It's a fantastic privilege to be RNIB's Chief Executive, and why wouldn't I want to take that role and make a difference to people's lives? So absolutely.
Well, we've heard today that Sally has finally got the job with the RNIB at what she describes as a turning point. We've already invited her onto the programme to discuss that turning point. We hope to be talking to Sally very soon. That's it for today. From me, Peter Wight, producer Cheryl Gabriel and the team. Goodbye.